Good morning, everyone. I'm John Brandt, CEO of the MPI Group. We are about to have our fabulous webinar, Manufacturing a New Future, moving from 2020 crisis to 2021 opportunity. But we have a number of people who are still logging in, so we're going to wait about another 90 seconds or so. So bear with us as we get everybody logged in. We've got a very large group of attendees today. We're very delighted by that. And as you know, we will be talking about the COVID-19 pandemic and specifically what we're going to be able to do looking forward. As you log in, if you do have any issues, please send a note and someone will try to assist you, but it should work pretty seamlessly. All right, we've got about another 45 seconds. We're going to wait as everybody logs on. All right, just about 20 more seconds and then we are going to get rolling. All right, I think we've got everybody logged on, or maybe a few people coming a little bit later. Then to start again, welcome to Manufacturing a New Future, moving from 2020 crisis to 2021 opportunity. I'm John Brandt, I'm CEO of the MPI Group, and we are a firm that combines research, strategic advice, and knowledge development to help executives create a difference in their companies, in performance, in profits, and in their people. Over the last 2 decades, it has been our distinct privilege to do research among more than 50,000 organizations and business units around the globe. We've been looking for ways that leaders meet tough challenges and how they take those challenges and figure out ways to find new opportunities by using their resilience and by using a focus on the long term. Now, these leaders, these businesses, just as you and your company are doing the same thing, are going to need those same skills as we move forward to navigate through the COVID-19, the coronavirus pandemic. That's the bad news. The good news is that we have seen and others have seen that there is a path forward, a path that has been traveled time and again by successful organizations who confront crisis and turn it into opportunity and into a way to care for their employees, for their customers, their vendors, and their communities. Joining me today in discussing this journey from crisis to opportunity are going to be Jordan Workman, who is Director of Client Development for Performance Solutions by Milliken, and his colleague from the UK, Chris Poole, Director of Client Development for the EMEA region. Jordan?
Hey, thank you very much, John. This is Jordan. Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us. I do want to start quickly with the recognition that the pandemic has been dramatic for many of us, and some of us in a very personal way, physically, mentally, financially. Our hearts go out to those in the front lines for healthcare and industry that are keeping us going through this difficult period. And while we're talking about the future, and there are reasons to be optimistic, we do recognize the big challenges that others are facing. For our organization, Chris and I both represent Performance Solutions by Milliken, which is an embedded consultancy within Milliken & Company. And Milliken & Company hasn't really seen a crisis like this one. I don't know that anyone has, but we have had many crisis moments in our company's history. We have our history in the textile business, and anyone that's familiar with that market, we know that it has had some very difficult periods and was really decimated in North America and Western Europe in the early 90s. That's one of many of those challenges that exist and happen, but one that's very personal for us. But the thing about these experiences that it forced us as a company to act differently, in many cases to to stop as leaders and to reflect on where we really are strong and what we really do need to do to survive. We often say, let's be intellectually honest with each other. And it's even more important to be intellectually honest with yourself about what your strengths are and where you see the future. The other thing that I would say is that it forced us to conceive the need to change, right? I mean, we understood that going through many different challenges, as everyone that's on this call is going through, that there was both an opportunity and a need to change to survive, but then also to think more opportunistically and thrive. The last thing I would say is that we had to have a recognition of what was short-term versus long-term in terms of the fixes. And we'll talk a lot about that today and the necessity to accommodate both the short-term and the long-term. So for us, that actually led to a system, a way of working that we think, again, that has not only helped us survive, but has helped us thrive over a very long period of time. And all of those attributes that we see as being successful through longer drawn out crises have also been big success factors for going through short-term crises, things like COVID-19. And you come out of it as a better company, but with no doubt about it, a different company as well.
Hey, Chris.
Hi, everybody. I'm Chris Poole in the UK. Thanks, Jordan, for that introduction. As we've said, we're looking forward to share our experiences, both inside of Milliken, but also those of our clients over the last few weeks and months, especially as they've come to terms with the challenges they face, and reflect on what we have learned, what they are learning, and we look forward to sharing with you a summary of those today, and also interacting with our audience, and we hope to encourage a lot of that Q&A at the end of the session. It's really important to collaborate on these topics as they're so important for everybody. So we look forward to hearing from you later on. Thank you.
Yeah, great. I want to encourage that. Please send your questions in all the way through the webinar. This is John again. Hey, when Performance Solutions by Milliken and MPI got together, we were kind of combining ideas, and combined with, we're looking right now at a time period where millions of workers, tens of thousands of executives and managers are finding themselves isolated and worried around the world. Leaders like you, like your employees, are focused on not just protecting the lives and livelihoods of yourselves, but your loved ones, your colleagues, your companies, and your communities and society at large. We actually believe that manufacturing leaders are going to play a critical role in how industry and society emerge from this crisis, how we take care of this. We also believe strongly that leaders are in a position right now where they can reassure their employees, they can keep them safe, and they can restore productivity and growth within their companies, within their industries, and within their economies. None of these goals are mutually exclusive. They're all achievable, but we're going to have to think differently, and we're going to have to think creatively. These are anxious times. And I want to stress that they're anxious because anxiety is a necessary evolution that we have done as human beings over thousands, millions of years. It's an adaptation to keep us safe, and when we're anxious, we're extra alert. We take care of things in a different way. And I'm sure you've already seen varying levels of anxiety in yourself, in your home, in your company. But we also know when we study anxiety that the way to manage it and the way to move forward is to figure out a way to influence your circumstances. If you can't completely control them, at least to plan and take actions that are going to minimize or eliminate the sources of the anxiety. It's been psychologically proven over and over again that those who focus on action and figuring out what they can influence and what they can control are going to feel better, and they're going to fare better going forward in the future than those who remain passive. This is what we're going to talk about today, how to look to the future for new opportunities and new ways of working that are going to help you and your team take action to survive, to revive, and to thrive. And we're going to start talking about leading as if tomorrow is going to happen, because we all know that tomorrow is going to happen, and we're going to need to figure out now what we want to do then. And we're going to do that by focusing on what we see as the 6 essential crisis strategies. For your ease of remembering this, they all start with a C. So let's just start with the first C strategy, care. Do good and be kind. As I mentioned before, we've seen it with many managers, a lot of employees in our communities. Stress and anxiety levels can be overwhelming for people. We all need each other more than ever right now, and we all need to be on our best behaviors. What this means is that your guiding principle as a leader is going to be the most important thing you can do is to focus everybody in your organization on its core values. Now, I'm guessing that for your organization, just like for many, those core values are going to involve taking care of the basic needs of associates, customers, and suppliers, safety, etc., protecting them, protecting their livelihoods. It is essential that this be an even more visible commitment by you as a leader right now and expressed in ways that demonstrate your concern, your respect, and your humility to everyone. Jordan, I know you've got some thoughts about this.
Yeah, I definitely do. I mean, I think if you look around, anybody that's in manufacturing or just in the office place in general, almost every workplace has been forced now to put procedures in place to physically protect employees from COVID-19. And if it wasn't recognized before as being job one, it's clearly recognized now as being job one, which is physical safety, right? Keeping everyone very safe, and that leading to other ways that you can actually produce and get back to work. And for our organization, we're big believers in shifting the ownership and responsibility for safety to every associate in the site, in any site that we work in. That goes for the office, environment, manufacturing, distribution, warehouse. And if you haven't started that process already, if it's still a leadership-driven organization, that process can take a bit of time to move through because it's a cultural change. But no matter where you are on your safety journey, building ownership for safety at the ground level, along with being what we call, your quote unquote, your brother or sister's keeper, is going to be more important than ever because there are going to be so many unforeseen challenges in what we can call very strange times. So as leaders and managers, you want to ensure mental safety for your associates as well, which is giving them the time to speak up. And we'll talk quite a lot about that. I think in any circumstance, change is hard. Our organization is built on driving change forward within organizations. It's hard, it's time consuming, it's strategic, and it's just a big weight to lift. So as you're going through this, it's important to stay calm. And we're seeing that over and over, and it's much easier to say than it is to actually do. But communicating, let everyone know what's occurring around them and then what's expected, giving people the confidence that they can talk about problems and the challenges they're facing more than ever will be important. I think it's important to note that any crisis, as well as an opportunity to demonstrate strong leadership. And this one in particular is an opportunity to see some leaders from your health and safety teams take on a much more complex challenge. If you see this as a very difficult challenge, which you should also see it as an opportunity, and it should be demonstrated as such for the leaders or the people within your organization to build confidence, to see their leadership, and also to understand how we solve problems when we're past the current environment. And I will add one additional note, John, to your comments on values, but I just want to underscore, do not compromise your values during this difficult period. And that goes for all of your values. If you compromise them now, it's going to compromise them permanently. So that's just something to keep in mind.
Thanks, Jordan. That is a great segue into our second C strategy. And that strategy is to coach. But if you're going to coach, make sure you do it from the back. This is very specifically not a time to tell people what to do. You want to reassure them. You want to work with them. You want to show concern and care. But this is not a time for you to just grab the reins and say, we're going to take charge. I mean, I'm not sure there ever was a time you should do that, but this is definitely not the time. Your employees know what to do right now. Let them do it. Ask questions, offer support, offer additional help, etc. But get out of the way and let them show you how they're going to lead. Chris, I know you've got some thoughts on this.
No, thanks, John. This is a critical point. So, remember the time before the crisis. You know, it feels only like a few seconds ago, but actually we're talking about a couple of months ago now, and we would have trusted our people to do the right things day in, day out to make our business a success then. So there's absolutely no reason why we shouldn't continue to do that right now. Unfortunately, a crisis can bring out both the worst as well as the best traits in some of our leaders. And that can be seen as being strong when we take things, as you say, with a firm grip. But actually, that's not what our people need. Our people need to feel the same trust that they would expect from us during difficult times as they do during the more straightforward times. And as leaders, it's our job to rely on their experiences and their knowledge, to provide them with the resources they need in difficult times to make things happen, and to provide support, coaching and resources. And if we do that, then that will only help their resilience, will only help their energy levels, and will only encourage their creativity, which is going to be critical in the time of difficulty that we have right now. We learned this the hard way within Milliken. If we went back a couple of decades ago, the typical leadership style was extremely command and control, top down, as was led by our leader at the time. And he went through a change himself in what he understood to be the right way to motivate and engage his people. And we had to fall in line with that and appreciate that. So we've learned that actually, if we're really going to get the best out of our people in any time, never mind the crisis, that working alongside with them, helping them to define what their daily standard work should be to be effective in their work, allow them to communicate and demonstrate what they're doing with that, and also allow them to surface and solve problems together. You know, our role is when the problems become too big or whether the resources are outside of their control. And then that's the right moment to be there, to be available to support them. And when we do that, then they'll realise what leaders we are and how we support them in these difficult times.
Yeah, I think those are great. Yeah, absolutely. I think those are great points. One of the most difficult things that we see both within our own organization, of course, but externally with all the clients we work with, is that trying to remember that the associates within an organization know their job better than anyone else, right? Including you. And they tend to also know how to improve those jobs, whether that's being articulated or voiced, is largely up to the structure for the organization and the culture. And so having the ability to improve jobs, having the ability to adapt them to a current or different situation is critical during the best of times, and it's going to be critical during the hardest of times. So a couple of things to remember there. Building the structure, the daily management structure that Chris just mentioned, to communicate and prioritize, and then allowing the leeway, the support, and the resources for those personnel to actually hit their targets to achieve the things that are necessary will be important. You also need to ensure that you have the personnel available that can make decisions and solve problems at the ground level. Unfortunately, well, I should say fortunately, you're going to need trust to do that. But unfortunately, it's hard to come by if it hasn't already been built. So, building trust and understanding that that there is trust between the managers or the leaders and the people on the floor will be critical. So getting that system of communication, being able to demonstrate that eyes and ears are open, that we're listening to you. Not only we're listening to you, we're taking action, we're providing positive response one way or the other to get through the strategy or the challenges that are at hand. Coaching and encouraging is great, but it can't happen on a once-off basis. It has to happen in that iterative fashion.
Agreed. So that takes us to the third C strategy, and that is to consolidate. What we mean by consolidate is that you have to do the basics brilliantly. Everybody tells us every day everything's different now. Everything's different. Nothing's changed. There's no new normal yet. Well, there is a lot that's different now. But as you move your company from a crisis mode toward new opportunities, when you're pivoting, it's just like in sports or anything else, or building a house, you got to do it from a strong foundation. And what we mean by this is that as you move to new ways of working, socially distanced stations, etc., different ways of connecting with customers, as you ramp up all these new ways of work, you need to make sure that you don't forget the basics of your business. Jordan?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right, John. I mean, well described. Companies that lacked the operational basics before the pandemic were probably already in trouble. And we see it quite often that it's very easy for organizations and people to move on to the next best thing, the exciting thing, the trend at the moment, without ensuring that the basics were there. And if they were already in trouble, in many cases, they just didn't know it. And they're going to be more vulnerable in this situation. The thing is, great business environments can cover up a lot of bad processes. I'm reminded of the great Warren Buffett quote when we talk about getting to the basics in before difficult times. He said, only when the tide goes out do you discover who's been swimming naked, right? And that's really the case, is that you get into these environments that are very difficult, and all of those good things, those momentum changers, shift in the other direction. And then we find out whether we had the processes in place. But if the basics aren't in place, you're going to have to remember to focus on the essentials: workplace safety, equipment care, standards, whether it's quality or equipment, elimination of waste. All of those places are where you have to begin. And as those basics are in place, and hopefully they are, you have to really look at it as one step at a time. Focus on what you can control now, that sphere of influence, and rely on those systems, rely on those capabilities that got you there, right? Focus your attention again on what we can own, what we can influence, how we can move it forward as much as you can. I don't want to say eliminate, but keep the focus away from all of those external factors that are driving it, and build it on the things that are most important for your organization. Again, we've talked about change quite a lot, but anytime that you're dealing with change, you have to make it bite-sized, right? You have to shrink that amount of change. So, as you look at the slide and it says, when in the fog, move forward one step at a time, literally imagine that you can only see your feet, but you have to go forward. That's really how you have to think about it. Get those basics right, and take it slow as you're trying to push through the difficult time.
Chris, did you want to add something there?
Yeah, thanks, Jordan. Thanks, John. So if we go back to a moment in time where Milliken really was in a random daily life, there was no sense of control or reliability in what we did. We recognized that actually we didn't have systems in place to deal with these challenges, to deal with looking after the basics. And as a result of that, our people were suffering. They weren't sure what was right, what was needed, and as a result of that, they couldn't feel comfortable or even proud in their work. So this manifested itself in the way that we maintained our equipment, the way we cared for our product quality, the methods that we followed to produce our work, the amount of time and attention we spent on training and development of our people. That's just not something we invested in. And then we discovered that actually there were systems available that we could adopt and we could integrate into our daily work, which would make the difference. So if we look at the next slide, that will show the system that we in Milliken have developed. It's something we call the performance system. You will see at the base in the center, our foundation is health, safety and environment. And that's critical for several things, especially in today's times, but particularly when it comes to building relationships and building trust, because if we can't look after the health and safety of each other, how can we deal with other challenges in our workplace? It's a fundamental basic. You'll also see to the left and right of that foundation various different systems. Some of you that have been involved in TPM or Lean or Six Sigma work will recognize a lot of that that language, and each of those pieces represents a system inside of the performance system overall which cares for standards. So whether that's the way we look after our work environment inside of 5S and workplace organization, or the way that we plan and move material and information around our businesses in the production flow piece, everything is connected, everything is integrated. And when we have those standards in place, it gives people comfort that they can fall back on those when other things are not going as they might expect. So the health and safety is one aspect of the foundation. Strategic clarity, a clear direction and communicating that consistently and effectively is also very important, especially in times of crisis. So that's something that we spend a lot of time on now with our clients where that's not so obvious. And these two anchors together ensure that we have the right base, a strong base for all aspects of people, equipment, materials and methods that can follow naturally from that. And when we provide that stability, that means that our team collectively feel more relaxed, feel more assured. And when you have anxious times like we have right now, that's something that gives them comfort and solace, and that's what's needed.
Chris, thanks. That brings us to our fourth C strategy, and that strategy is compress. And what we mean by compress is to learn fast and to solve simply. It is just a fact that most of us, many of us, a lot of us have been operating our companies with reduced staff, reduced hours. There are many manufacturers that have had to close plants for weeks and may remain closed for a little while. The result of that, I think, for most of us is that when we're trying to take action is that we have this enhanced sense of urgency. We want to get everything back to where it was 2 months ago. We want to do it right now. And the problem with that is that's a very natural human inclination, but we need to resist the temptation to try to do too much, to work on too much, to get too much done too quickly. As Jordan said earlier, we need to take small steps in the areas of greatest need. It's about eating the elephant one bite at a time. We're going to get back to a new normal. It's going to take some time, 12 months, 18 months. We have to find the first thing to work on, then the next thing, then the next thing, then the next thing. Jordan, maybe you'd want to elaborate.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you go to the next slide, you think Pareto, right? And it's not going to be difficult. I shouldn't even say right now. It's not difficult to find lots of issues, lots of things that we need to fix at any given time on any given day. And you're going to have a lot of issues right now. The challenge is that they're going to be new, but in reality, there's still probably one or two that will drive most of your successes or failures over the next 2 to 3 months, maybe over the next 6 to 12, right? Solving those big things will make a difference. You know, for us, we like to prioritize with zero loss thinking, just measuring against that zero base and having our losses point us in the direction of improvements. And that always has to be done in conjunction with the business strategy. But in this time, you really have a third variable, which is the external situation with COVID-19 and all of the other aspects of dealing with variable demand, right? I mean, it's variable demand one way or the other. In many cases, it's extremely accelerated. It feels very binary out in the market today. It's either extremely accelerated, you can't produce anything fast enough, or it's incredibly slow. And both of those things have different challenges. Both of those things have different opportunities, but nevertheless, identifying those primary opportunities, work on those and fix those. If you can try to, again, get this down to that bite-sized focus, improving the priority areas, and even if it's smaller.
Chris, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, let me continue that point that Jordan was making. You know, I guess I think of it in terms of energy management. So times like we have right now consume a huge amount of energy, and that can be physical and mental, right? So we have to work out how to ensure that the energy that we have is deployed in the right way to the right things. So what we may have been committing to in terms of significant projects, CapExes, reorganizations, may not make sense right now because the attention to detail and energy that they require to make them effective just isn't around. So actually, as we've said in a couple of different ways up till now, shrinking what's needing to be done into just the most important things and do those few things beautifully with those scarce resources that you have available to you is a way to take a step forward and to take advantage of that situation. We've learned that actually less is more in many cases, and to use the right data to support the choice of the right few things to do, and then ensure that you harness that team's energy around those and protect them from outside other distractions where possible, can give you some good benefits. And we think that's a sensible thing to do. It's important to show people that we're listening to their concerns, their pain points, and that can influence also the selection of the few things to work on. But it's important to make sure that we protect our people within that. So I guess what I'm saying is that, prioritize and then act swiftly, but support your teams with the resources they need to maintain the energy that they're going to need to be successful. Thanks, John.
Great, thank you much. Well, we all recognize that there's a lot to be done. We all know the temptation to try to get it all done. The problem is even when you narrow it down, even when you use your Pareto, can you actually get it done by yourself? And the answer there, just as it was in normal times, is no, you can't. And that brings us to our 5th C, which is to collaborate and share the load. And Chris or Jordan, which one of you wants to take this one right now?
Yeah, I can take this one, John. I think you're right, and obviously it's there on the slide, but there's a lot to be done. If you're going to get it done well, you're going to have to get collaboration. You're going to have to get cross-functional work, and you're going to have to be able to expand workplace capabilities, right? You're going to see the need for more flexibility. I think an important piece of getting this right, so the companies that get this right will also have a huge leg up in how they emerge from the crisis as a more productive organization. And that's an important thing to look forward to and actually feel somewhat optimistic about, but it is a hard process. So what we know is that when you have engaged and empowered frontline associates, in many cases, they can assume multiple roles, right? There's going to be a need for operational flexibility, and there is almost always the ability to deliver that flexibility. So there are going to be days in the next few months, maybe a year, maybe a couple of years, we don't know, when employees can't come to work. They may be sick, they may have to take care of family. I mean, who knows what the challenge will be, or the changes that you'll have to make within your own organization to meet the different economic circumstances. But the flexibility and comfort with collaboration you develop among associates will help you address inevitable labor variability, and that will be important. One of the things is that expanding employee capabilities and flexibility can't really happen without being able to identify specific skills and what you need to teach them with. For us, we call that continuous skills development. It's one of the pillars of the Milliken Performance System that Chris talked about a little bit ago. Continuous skills development is our parlance for training in many cases, but I think the important part out of that, or the operative word really, is continuous. It's an iterative process in which you're building skills in a more normal circumstance over a longer period of time, but it will be important to speed up this work as roles get revised to accommodate the virus protections, or operations get back up to speed, or different markets change, the dynamics change for the organizations, whether it's, again, your internal organization, the people that are there and showing up, or the actual demand that you're dealing with. There are going to be a lot of different ways to do that. So in short, to kind of summarize, what you'll need to do as organizations, start to document the knowledge that's required for those critical positions, the ones that need to establish some flexibility that may or may not exist at the moment. And you're going to establish some standard work procedures for those. If in a lot of cases, you have those standard operating procedures, right? You have that standard work. We need to kind of uniformly avoid the 30-page standard operating procedures that no one has used before. It's very hard, number one, to follow that. Number two, it's very hard to build flexibility around it. So it's important to enlist the associates to help with this process, documenting what that standard work looks like, helping that process to train, giving the associates the knowledge they need to adhere to the standards that you promised your customers or clients. This doesn't need to be days of training in classrooms. In fact, it really can't be at this juncture. But just-in-time training is not only going to be able to transfer skills effectively, it also makes it a lot more likely that they'll be able to retain the knowledge. And then after that, again, it gets back to that iterative process. You're going to need to regularly monitor the work, be able to set up those coaching moments as leaders. Again, this isn't a one-off process. You want to build a stronger organization. You want to emerge out of this process, survive out of this process as a stronger organization. You're going to have to get more focused on how you coach and build those skills. One of the first things that we do with many clients is to try and develop safety committees made up of frontline staff. And what that allows us to do, I'm kind of flipping from continuous skills development to safety, but I can make it full circle by saying you can demonstrate trust in a normal environment by starting with safety, by building the teams, the cross-functional teams, the collaboration, the training process focused on safety, because we can all agree on safety. When we build those teams, you start to build ownership. You start to build a different process for learning how to function as a team. You start to build an environment which is comfortable with a safety audit. It doesn't feel like a punitive environment. And so those are things that we've regularly started in a different type of circumstance where you're running very hard. You have to always include that safety structure, but also think about how you train your organization and team broader than just safety. But that's just an example.
Great, thanks. As in all the research that we've done over the years, one of the single most important factors in determining the future of productivity or profitability for a manufacturer is how many hours of training and how they invest in that training in folks. So I can't overemphasize the importance of that. So let's turn the page here and go to the final strategy, which is, if we think about it, for many of our employees in many places, simply going to work has become kind of heroic because people are scared. They don't know what's going to happen. It's certainly the case with healthcare workers and first responders, but also for many of our employees and for manufacturers. Just coming into the office or plants can put people at a level of risk that they haven't been in now for several weeks, and certainly that they've never experienced before. And what that does is that takes us to our sixth and final C strategy, which is that we need to celebrate them. We need to recognize the loyalty and commitment of our associates. It is absolutely true that not since the GFC, the global financial crisis of 2008, not since then have so many people appreciated still having a job. But for those that do have a job, it doesn't make it any easier to come into work or to focus on the tasks at hand, especially when those tasks and those workstations and even the processes may be vastly different from what they have been used to in the past. All of us know that our companies have changed and they're going to continue to change. Not knowing where that change will leads to anxiety and worry, and can actually lead to some of your employees being scared. Now is the time for us as leaders to recognize that, to be empathetic about that, and to make sure that we over-communicate our understanding, our reassurance, and what we can all do together to try to mitigate this. If you over-communicate, if you consistently communicate across the organization at all levels, it does a lot of good things. First of all, it eliminates speculation, rumor, ambiguity. It keeps the focus on the most important tasks. It gives people clear daily targets of what they need to do, both to maintain current standards and how they should improve in various areas. And finally, when your team, all of your associates, hear a calm, consistent voice, that is something that is incredibly encouraging to them as they step up to the new challenges they face both personally and professionally. MPI, our company, we're based in Ohio. Our state's leaders have communicated daily, just as many in other states have done, about the coronavirus and about how every citizen is responsible for helping to contain it. Those messages in our state and in others have led to comparatively good outcomes, and our government leaders, it's been interesting to watch them. They have been consistent in trying to make sure they recognize everyone for their combined and collaborative efforts. It's a great model for all of us. We need to speak to our employees daily, all the time about this. We need to recognize their efforts. In fact, we need to over-recognize them right now. We should over-recognize them for adhering to standards, for remaining calm and positive, and for working collaboratively. Because as I said at the start, we need each other more than ever right now. And Jordan, I know you've got some thoughts about that. We chatted about this. Well, Jordan, Chris, you may want to add something there.
Yeah, sure.
No, I'm sorry.
Jordan's back.
Sorry about that, John. I was commenting. You're exactly right, John. It's just always important. You've summed it up well. It's important to remember that communication works both ways, and leaders and managers have to listen to what the front line tells them. But again, we've said this several times throughout this conversation, but you have to react. They can't just go in one ear and out the other. There has to be a back and forth. And you can go into different environments and different organizations, and you'll encounter workers who just won't go to managers or leadership with a problem because they know that their concerns won't be met, or they won't be listened to, or it will be passed off. And that's something you really want to avoid, because you don't want to build a culture or a reputation within an organization where the management is looking for someone to blame, and the typical path is to cast an individual associate down for poor performance. You're going to have to encourage upward communication. Go out of your way to get it. Turning communication and those processes into a punitive process is a very, very quick way to stymie productivity and really lose any trust that you built. Don't let that happen. The other thing that I feel like I've said many times and to many people is that we can talk about engagement as this pie in the sky, or this just nice to have, and it's motherhood and apple pie type of thing. But if you really want engaged people, if you want great performance, which requires engaged people, then you have to go out of your way as a leader to be engaging. That's your responsibility. You have to resist the temptation to place blame elsewhere when things don't go well. A lot of those problems, I think we've probably all heard the saying, is that they're caused by a bad process, not really by bad people. So communication, transparency, they'll not only improve performance, but they'll help create a better culture. They'll help eliminate some of that fear and subjectivity, that anxiety that you talked about earlier in the presentation. They'll start to eliminate some of those feelings propping up without having the opportunity to address them. So ownership and pride are going to be incredibly important. Thanks, John.
Hey, Jordan, thank you. A lot of what we've talked about today with these 6 strategies has been focused on the most important, the small first steps we have to do. I guess I would ask both of you here before we go to questions, and please continue entering your questions. We're getting some good ones in here. We've covered a lot here. Have we missed anything? Jordan, Chris, have we missed anything?
Yeah, I'd just like to take the opportunity to emphasize again this point about energy management. And I think combine it with something Jordan just touched on about the difference between bad processes and people, So if we're going to go and spend more time with our people than we might do normally, to some that might be threatening. So we're going to have to go out there with a huge dose of humility. We're going to have to take a step in their shoes with what they're dealing with. And we're going to have to take our time before we make decisions. We're going to have to listen much, much more acutely than we might do normally because of the anxiety that is fueling people's actions right now. So management of energy, taking time to be with them and to listen with humility, and then call out the things that we see, the things that we touch, that we should be proud of. So, when we talk about the greens, they're often the folks that are doing the right thing and have always done the right thing, but without expecting anything in return, and actually their diligence provides a great example to their colleagues, and we should call that out. As a result of that, we get reliable customer service as a result of that. So we should make the effort to do that. as well as those that are putting themselves into brand new situations because we're asking them to adapt to this changing environment and still perform. So those that are displaying, adaptive and improvisational skills, we should also be calling out those too, because without them we wouldn't be able to deal with these different situations. So managing the energy of the teams that we have, focusing them on just the things they have in front of them, and then calling out the green and the red behaviours that we see will definitely give them the sense that we're there as leaders to support them. And as a result of that, the key priorities that we have as a business, so safety, quality, equipment maintenance, etc., eliminating these immediate pain points for the individuals and for the organisation, and obviously helping to preserve or generate improvement and financial benefits where we can, will all come together in this way. Oh, and by the way, let's not forget about focusing on what happens next in the future, but we'll have a team that have actually come together and integrated as a result of our leadership behaviours. So we'll be stronger for what that future brings. Thanks, John.
Hey, Chris, thank you. And don't go away, because we've got some questions here and we've got some good ones. And actually, Chris, you're going to be first up with the first question. So again, everybody, please enter your questions. Chris, you encourage us to engage and empower our employees, especially now, but how can we do that if they didn't trust management before the crisis?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Yeah, it's our moment, right? This is our moment as leaders. So there may well have not been the relationships that needing to be built to this point in the eyes of some, and that's the nature of working in operations. We understand that. At the end of the day, humility is what's going to win the day. So if we haven't had that chance in the past to broker that relationship, this is now the time. We have to take a step back as leaders and focus on the needs of others, and actually go spend time with them and go spend time listening to what they need. And then when we hear something that we can do something about, act quickly and demonstrate to them that we are actively listening and we are there to support them. And when we do that, you will be surprised by how quickly the history that we may have had together can be overcome, because at the end of the day, this is something that doesn't discriminate right now. So this is not something that picks out certain individuals or certain parts of the organisation and favours them or punishes them. So this is a chance for us to show that in this non-discriminatory situation that we have right now, we can be humble and supportive, and if we need to, start to build the trust that we may not have had in the past.
Chris, thank you. We've got a number of questions here. This one, I'm going to pick one that came in for Jordan. Jordan says, you've spoken a lot about managing through difficult times right now. What do you and your clients see as 2021 opportunities?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think with the title of the presentation, it makes sense to ask that one. I will say that I hear a question like that the answer will be highly variable, right? I don't want to give you a consultant answer, which is it depends, but it will be highly variable. It will depend once again on where you're looking, whether it's as a business or an organization, at the level, at a single site or at a company. It'll depend on your current maturity level, and certainly it's going to depend to some degree on some external economic factors. With that said, if we look back during the great financial crisis, a lot of the manufacturing companies that are in the S&P 500, the large companies and the small companies that weren't in the S&P 500, they came out of the Great Recession more productive than when they entered. They were delivering more product per person, and they were operating more efficiently and more profitably overall. And we saw it with our clients. We saw it broader with other organizations that weren't serving directly as clients. And the thing that happened is that they just learned how to do more with less, and they learned quickly, because you have to learn quickly. So while this situation feels different because of the crisis, and there is a lot of suffering that is out there, and I'm not dismissive of that at all, but as you're looking at this, what are those opportunities? Where could you be opportunistic? Well, I see this situation being somewhat similar. So if I can build an organization of flexible problem solvers, which is what we've talked about today, right? And this is one of those times that it's going to force you to do so to some degree. So if I can build that organization of flexible problem solvers during this time frame, and then I can open my organization to listening to the solutions from those problem solvers. And I'll add one additional factor that we haven't talked about, but if I also open myself to a broader set of technological solutions along with those problem solvers, I think you're going to be in a good space. But the important thing to remember is that you're going to need both to actually be in that better space. You're going to need those problem solvers. You're going to need their solutions in terms of how you make decisions, and you're going to actually be able to take advantage of technology and implementation that you may not have before. So, the companies that do both really well, and this may be over, this could be a 6-month, an 18-month, a 24-month process, but I think the companies that do really well and have just a little economic tailwind, which we'll certainly need, I think they're going to reach escape velocity. I think it'll be hard for their competitors to catch up.
Jordan, thank you for that. All right, I'm looking through the other questions here. All right, Chris, this one's for you. This is actually, I think, one a lot of people are wrestling with right now. It says, many of our support staff don't need to be in our plant and can work from home. Do you have any tips or best practices on how we should manage a remote workforce?
No, great question. Thanks very much, John. So as you might imagine, Milliken and our clients are absolutely continuing our business, but we are utilizing more and more remote working as a way to do that and do that effectively. So reflecting a little on our most recent experiences, I guess there are 3 to 5 key lessons that we're learning and we're managing through right now. So as I go through these, I hope they're helpful. So the first part for us has been making sure that the tech that we need to do this effectively is appropriate and is flexible enough for the work that we do. So depending on what you need in terms of interactions, whether that's communication only, then that's maybe the most basic. But those that are actually facilitating workshops, discussions, collaboration, there's a whole bunch of opportunity out there in terms of the tech that's available. And therefore take advantage of what that is. And much of it is free to use, at least in the first phase, so you can experiment with it before you choose what you need. And then obviously the next challenge is to make sure that the team that need to use it are able to use it. So the focus then will be on the testing and the training of that tech with the team that is going to be using it. We've also understood that the team in itself requires some thought, because we may have groups of very large size that we need to reach across various different time zones. There may be some small group collaboration that's going on. So being very clear about what the team makeup is and what the team dynamic is and what they're going to need will also be significant when it comes to considering virtual working. The time zones can be challenging. So it's very important to make sure that we appreciate and are sensitive to the dynamic of the home work environment, right? So not just where you live and the time zone you live in, but also the dynamic of having children at home. Maybe your partner's at home also because their organization is doing the same. So working flexibly to find times that suit everybody despite the changing needs that they have will be critical. And then finally, I guess always is the case, be prepared to innovate and troubleshoot as you go, because as we all know, tech is not always reliable, and therefore having a good plan B for the situations that you find yourself in will be important to ensure continuity and to eliminate frustration of those on the line at the time. So I would say getting tech right, the testing and the training of that, making sure the team dynamics are well understood, making sure the time aspects are taken into account, and then be prepared with a backup plan if needed. So troubleshooting as you go, all of those will be essential.
Thanks, Chris. All right, looking through here, I think we have time for one more question. So this one's for Jordan, and someone says, we're facing a lot of challenges. What are the biggest or most common challenges that your clients are facing today, and how are you helping them to overcome them?
Yes, so I think we can talk about really the first one, which is the most obvious one, is the safety challenge. Anybody that's worked with us or spoke with us knows what an importance we place on safety during normal times, and these are not normal times, they're extraordinary times. So we see that as a really prevalent challenge, one that persists across the board no matter the economic situation. And that bleeds over into I would say maybe a second challenge, which is how do we get back to work? So we move back to, again, I won't call them normal times, but we're bringing everybody back. We've got an opportunity to work and do the things that we love to do. How do we build the processes and procedures to get back to work, which is kind of tied to safety? And then how do we build an organization that adapts to this environment? And I think that's another challenge. The last one I would say is that, just having limitations on the support that they can receive and provide. We're so used to operating in a certain manner, and that includes our organization. Chris talked about the difficulties of communication. Everyone's adjusting to a new way of communicating, to a new way of executing, and those are all those challenges that exist. And we work with clients across the board there, whether it is in trying to develop a strategy where you can come out of this a stronger organization. In reality, though, right now people are trying to do, as we said before, is get through the fog. Do what we can concentrate on right now. Build the communication channels that can still be functional. We're dealing with the social distancing requirements, so making those functional, making those capable when those used to be an in-person, all together, a team event. Those are challenges we're working with clients on. Understanding how you build a structure of work. I mean, how do people go out on the line, remain safe, but still execute and deliver what they need to do? And then I think the one that we've talked about a lot about today, but it has become more prevalent. It is very important this time, is just helping them identify the largest and most immediate problems, and then how to build that support structure, those teams to go and find solutions. It's easy to get caught up in, I need this problem fixed and I need it fixed right now. Well, we still have to think about, number one, giving people the knowledge on how to solve those problems. But number two, how do I solve the problem and ensure that it doesn't come back, that I do it sustainably? So we work with our clients across the board on those things.
Great. Jordan, thank you so much for that. And I want to thank every one of our attendees out there. I know everyone is dealing with a very difficult situation, and I hope that this webinar has been helpful. Certainly focusing on these principles have been helpful for a number of organizations that we've looked at and that Performance Solutions by Milliken has looked at over the years. Chris Poole, Jordan Workman, thank you both for being with us today. Thanks to everyone on the line. We appreciate your time, and we wish you the best of luck going forward. That concludes this webinar. Thank you very much.